Hi, we're finally coming to the last chapter of Bando, the dog who led a double life, and it's called Will the Operation Be a Success? What do you think? Can you see parts of Muffin here? Or just a part of she's gone off to sleep, okay? No snack for her today, it's sleeping time. Will the operation be a success? Bando and Mustafa waited and waited for what seemed like a week, but it was really just a couple of hours. When the old lady was finally brought out of the operation theatre, Bando almost jumped up, shouting, "Can you see me? Can you see me? Can you see me?" But he felt a bit silly because he saw that both Mrs. Murthy's eyes were covered with cotton patches and plastered down. Oh God, he prayed, what have they done to her? Then for the first time, old Dr. Mr. Grumpus smiled. Bando's heart filled with hope all over again. Putting one arm around Mustafa and the other on Bando, the doctor explained that the operation had been a complete success. The patches were put on the eyes just to give them time to heal. In a few days, they would be off, and when Mrs. Murthy opened her eyes, she most certainly would be able to see. Bando wept, absolutely wept with relief, while an emotional Mustafa held him in his arms saying, okay, it's all over now, thank God. The poor young man had been nervous that his friend Bando would be disappointed, but now thankfully everything had turned out perfectly. For the next 48 hours, Mrs. Murthy was not allowed any visitors. She was to rest. To keep himself from going absolutely mad with suspense, Bando decided to clean up the house. He swept and he swabbed and he brushed and he dusted until the house shone. Hopefully, if the house looked this grand when Mrs. Murthy came home, she'd assume that Bando had kept it like this, spotless, all those years when she couldn't see. But that wasn't true. Bando was a good housekeeper, but not so spotlessly clean. To pass time, Bando sat in the kitchen, pulling out all the back issues of the City Times that had carried his weekly cartoon. Last thing he did before leaving to pick up the old lady was to fill up all the vases with fresh flowers. He remembered how much she liked them. That, Bando felt, would be the best way to welcome Mrs. Murthy into the world of sight. Outside the door to Mrs. Murthy's hospital room, Bando stopped, almost too nervous to enter. He quickly put on a smile on his face, remembering that if the old lady could finally see, then the first thing she set her eyes on after all those years ought to be a cheerful face. Bando stepped in bravely with that false, strained smile, like sometimes that fake smile, which doesn't look like a smile at all. With that false, strained smile stretched across his face. He looked ghastly. Fortunately, Mrs. Murthy didn't get to see that look. She'd have been very scared if she had. Bando had hoped to find Mrs. Murthy sitting up in bed, facing the door and waiting to welcome him. Instead, what Bando saw when he entered that room was the old lady lying limply on her side, moaning strangely as huge convulsions racked her body. Bando's stupid smile got wiped off his face as he rushed to the bed. He shouted for a nurse and yelled for the doctor. What on earth was happening to Mrs. Murthy? When he got to the other side of the bed, he saw her face all red with tears streaming down her cheeks, her whole body shaking. It took Bando a whole minute to realize Mrs. Murthy was laughing. She was laughing, and that's why her body was shaking the way it was, and that's why her face was red. In her left hand, she held a folded newspaper that was covered with Bando's sketches of Anna. She opened her eyes and through the tears caught sight of Bando. That knocked the laughter out of her for a moment, and she held out her arms to him, crying, "Oh, Bando, my Baba, You look just the same, my pet, just as handsome as the last time I saw you 4 years back. She hugged him tight. She hugged him tight. Look at this girl not showing her face to the camera. And you're just as cuddly. She kissed the top of his head. And just as this went on for some time, lots of kissing and cuddling and just as sweet and just as cuddly, all that Mrs. Murthy did to Bando. Then she suddenly stopped, patted the newspaper beside her, and collapsed into laughter all over again. Finally, wiping her eyes and gasping for breath, she managed to say, "Oh, Bando, you'll be the cause of my heart attack, I'm sure. Who is this poor Anna, anyway, that he's drawn 50 cartoons of?" And that was how the doctor found them when he rushed in to check on his patient. The old lady and her dog poring over a newspaper and laughing their heads off. That's the end of the Bando story. Okay, I hope you've enjoyed Bando. I hope you enjoyed meeting Muffin, who's refusing to look at the camera today. Bye then. I hope you liked the story, and write back and tell us what you think.